Mr. Attorney General, in my opening statement, I raised the issue as to whether you had been candid, more bluntly truthful in your statements about not being involved in, quote, discussions, not being involved in, quote, deliberations, not seeing memoranda. And then in your opening statement, you said two things which appear to me to be carrying forward this same pattern of not being candid. You said that you were only involved to a limited extent in the process. And then you say you should have been more precise. Well, it's not exactly a matter of precision to say that you discussed the issues or were involved in deliberations and decisions. That is just a very basic, fundamental fact. Now, let me review some of the record with you. And we don't have much time, and it's necessary to go through it at a rather summary basis. But I know you're familiar with this record because I know you've been preparing for this hearing.
I prepare for every hearing, Senator.
Do you prepare for all your press conferences? Were you prepared for the press conference where you said there weren't any discussions involving you?
Senator, I've already said that I misspoke. It was my mistake.
I'm asking you, were you prepared? You interjected that you're always prepared. Were you prepared for
Senator,
that press
I didn't say that I was always prepared. I said I prepared for every hearing.
Well, and I'm asking you, do you prepare for your press conferences?
Senator, we do take time to try to prepare for the press conference.
And were you prepared when you said you weren't involved in any deliberations? Senator,
I've already conceded that I misspoke at that press conference. There was nothing intentional. And the truth of the matter is, Senator,
let's move on. I don't think you're going to win a debate about your preparation, frankly. But let's get to the facts. I'd like you to win this debate, Attorney General Gonzalez. I'd like you to win this debate.
I apologize,
but you're going to have to win it. This is what some of the record shows. And this is according to sworn testimony from your Chief of Staff, Kyle Sampson, from the Acting Associate Attorney General, Bill Mercer, and by the Executive Director of the Office of U.S. Attorneys, Michael Battle. You had a first conversation with Sampson in December of 2004 about replacing U.S. attorneys. Then there were intervening events, but I'll come to some of the highlights. On June 1st, 2006, in an email, Sampson described your statements on a plan addressing U.S. Attorney Lamb's problems with the option of removing her. Certainly sounds like more than discussions, deliberations, and judgments. I'm going to go on because I want to give you the whole picture here. Then on June 4th or 5th, according to sworn testimony, Attorney Mercer discussed with you Lamb's performance. Then on June 13th of 2006, Sampson, sworn testimony, said that you, quote, almost certainly consulted on the removal of Bud Cummings. Then in mid-October, you've now identified a date of October 11th. You went to the White House to talk about your vote fraud concerns. Mr. Rove, with the president personally, came back and, according to Sampson's sworn testimony, said, look into the vote prosecution issues, including those in New Mexico. That's what Sampson says under sworn testimony. Then on November 27th of 2006, you attended a meeting on the removal plans, attended by Sampson, Goodling, McNulty, Battle, a whole host of people. Now, I've just given you a part of the picture as to what these three deputies of yours, high-ranking deputies, have said that you did. on talking about removal, talking about replacements. Now, do you think it is a fair, honest characterization to say that you had only a, quote, limited involvement in the process, close quote?
Senator, I don't want to quarrel with you.
I don't want you to either. I just want you to answer the question.
Sir, I guess it's... I had knowledge that there was a process going on. I don't know all
You didn't understand there was a process going on?
No, I had, sir, I had knowledge that there was a process going on.
Well, were you involved in it?
Senator, with respect to Carol Lamb, for example.
Were you involved in the process?
I was involved in the process, yes, sir.
Were you involved to a limited extent only?
Yes, sir.
How much more could you have been involved than to be concerned about the replacement of Cummings and to evaluate Lamb and to be involved in Iglesias? Now, we haven't gone over the others, but is that limited in your professional judgment?
Based on what I thought that I understood was going on, yes, Senator. I thought Mr. Sampson, I directed Mr. Sampson to consult with senior officials in the department who had information about the performance of United States attorneys. I believe that that was ongoing, and that he would bring back to me a consensus recommendation. The discussion about Ms. Lamb, never in my mind, was about this review process. And I indicated so in my conversation with Pete Williams, I believe on March 26th, is that we were doing this process. Of course, there were other discussions outside of the review process about the performance of United States attorneys. I can't simply stop doing my supervisor responsibilities over United States attorneys because this review process is going.
Did you tell Mercer to take a look at Lamb's record with a view to having her removed as a U.S. attorney?
Senator,
or is he wrong?
I don't recall. Here's what, Senator, what I recall is, of course, the department had received numerous complaints about Carol Lamb's performance with respect to gun prosecutions and immigration prosecutions. I directed that we take a look at those numbers because I wanted to know. And I don't recall whether it was Mr. Mercer who presented me the numbers, but I recall being very concerned.
But you were involved in evaluating U.S. Attorney Lamb's record, weren't you?
Senator, I did not view that, and I did not view that as part of Mr. Sampson's project of trying to analyze and understand the performance of United States attorneys for possible removal.
Never mind Mr. Sampson's project. Weren't you involved in the evaluation of U.S. Attorney Lamb?
Senator, of course, I was involved in trying to understand.
Weren't you involved in the decision on the removal of Arkansas U.S. Attorney Bud Cummings, as Kyle Sampson testified?
Senator, I have no recollection about that, but I presume that that is true.
Weren't you involved in the decisions with respect to U.S. Attorney Iglesias in New Mexico, as you've already testified in response to the chairman's questions?
Senator, I do recall having the conversation with Mr. Rove. I now understand that there was a conversation between myself and the president, and at some point, Mr. Sampson brought me what I understood to be the consensus recommendation of the senior leadership that we ought to make a change in that district.
Okay, now we've got to evaluate, and this is a final statement before I yield, as to whether the limited number of circumstances that I have recited, and it's only a limited number, there are many, many more, whether you are being candid in saying that you were involved only to a limited, you only had a, quote, limited involvement in the process. As to being candid, and also as to having sound judgment, if you consider that limited. And as we recite these, we have to evaluate whether you are really being forthright and saying that you, quote, should have been more precise, close quote, when the reality is that your characterization of your participation is just totally, significantly, if not totally, at variance with the facts.
Senator, you're talking about a series of events that occurred over approximately 700 days. I probably had thousands of conversations during that time. And so putting it in context, Senator, I would say that my involvement was limited. I think that is an accurate statement. It was limited involvement. And with respect to certain communications, such as the communication with the president, such as the discussions about Carol Lamb,